Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francesco Di Lillo, here with Derek Munson. And on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Sutherland Institute, we're delighted to welcome you to the second webinar of our Strengthening Families webinar series titled Families in Transition, Navigating Modern Challenges. It is wonderful to see so many of you joining us today, and I'm excited about the insightful discussions we're going to have. This series aims to bring together experts, scholars, and practitioners from various fields to explore and share knowledge on the impact of new policies and laws on families and family dynamics. We believe that through these webinars, we can generate innovative ideas that will contribute to the strengthening of families throughout effective policymaking. We would like to extend our gratitude to our speakers here that are here today for their time and effort in preparing these presentations. We also want to thank all of you for being with us today. Derek.
Thank you, Francesco. I want to add to Francesco, welcome from Sutherland Institute. We appreciate everybody who's here participating today. In our second webinar of our webinar series this year, we're featuring contributors from civil society, faith, and the communities in which they reside, who offer firsthand support and advocacy for families. By sharing these on-the-ground perspectives, we aim to highlight the practical challenges and solutions experienced by those working directly with families. Community organizations, faith-based initiatives, and media professionals play a crucial role in providing support and fostering family cohesion. This session will explore their real-world experiences and success stories and offer valuable insights into how communities can effectively support and strengthen families. We're going to begin the webinar today with some introductory comments from our four panelists. The first speaker is going to be David Quinn, who is the CEO of Iona Institute in Ireland. And we'll start with him, and once his remarks conclude, then we'll go and I'll introduce the next speaker. So go ahead, take it away, David.
Thank you, Derek. So I'm also a journalist. I'm an opinion writer here in Ireland. So I've been commenting on kind of social, political, and religious affairs for a good few years now, and I've taken part in many debates about the kind of things that the Sutherland Institute will be very engaged in also. So I'm not coming at this from a kind of community organization perspective. It's more from a kind of research and journalism perspective is where I'm coming at it from. But when Francesco asked me there a few weeks ago to take part in this, and I was kind of contemplating what kind of topics to touch on over the first 5 minutes, three came to mind that I'll discuss very briefly. So one of them is the impact of social media and social influencers on young people, debates around childcare, daycare, and also something that's really taking place in a big way in all our countries, which is the big delay in young people reaching the normal adult milestones. So I'm just going to touch on these very briefly, and of course we can discuss these more as we go along. I don't know to what extent this particular program has been seen outside of Britain and Ireland, but it's one of the biggest Netflix hits ever in the history of the network, and that's a series called Adolescence. So Adolescence deals with this 13-year-old boy. He's been raised in a kind of upper working class family, I guess, and he's kind of induced by social media and the influence of people like Andrew Tate, the kind of toxic male influencer, and the whole incel culture, to killing a fellow schoolgirl who he has been taunted by, and she's 13 and he's 13. And this has caused the most immense debate in Britain and Ireland, and a huge debate about the kind of influence that has been exerted on young boys in particular, and to what extent they're being pushed down dark pathways. It's been treated almost as documentary-like. So I dare say something similar will eventually turn up in the US, and maybe it'll be a big hit there as well, and maybe in some of the other European countries. But I cannot overemphasize the extent to which it's been a huge topic in Britain and Ireland, commented on by our respective prime ministers and so on. But in the debate about the programme, it occurred to me that the chances, and parents are worrying about this, the chances of your 13-year-old boy up in his bedroom being influenced to go and kill a classmate are incredibly remote. That in fact, the influence has been exerted upon them. Probably boys are much more likely to be watching, unfortunately, hardcore pornography. Even when they're not doing that, social media is kind of meaning they have far less face-to-face interaction with real people in the real world. You can see, and I speak, to fellow journalists about this. A lot of young people are essentially socially de-skilling. That is losing the power of kind of ordinary conversation because even when they are together, they are on their phones or maybe have their AirPods in, and are in a constant comparison cauldron where everybody is putting up the best version of their lives online and they feel inadequate as a result. So I think if parents are worrying about the influence of social media, they shouldn't be worrying so much that their 13-year-old is turning into a killer up in his bedroom. It's these more mundane but still very real effects. I think around the area of family policy. All families with children are concerned about the issue of daycare, who looks after their children when both parents are out working, as is normally the case now. I think there's a huge overemphasis by the state on funneling resources into daycare. I mean, once upon a time, what used to be said was a mother's place is in the home, but now this seems to have been replaced by a mother's place is in work and a child's place is in daycare and later in school. And so, not enough government policy, it seems to me, is being directed towards helping parents make the childcare choice they want to make, whether that be daycare or whether it be looking after their children at home themselves, or perhaps getting a nanny or another family member to do so. So, it seems to me that government childcare policy is not pro choice in the proper sense of that term. Finally, I think a big theme is the big delays and now being seen in young people reaching the normal adult milestones, by which I chiefly mean people getting married and starting families, because that was commonly done when we were in our 20s. And now we see people delaying this until they're in their 30s. In Ireland, we've gone from the average man marrying at 26 in the 1980s. They're about 37 now when they get married, and the average woman is about 35 or 36 getting married. And then many are not getting married at all because they leave it so late, and then they discover they can't have children because they have also left it so late. And we'll be touching on this as we go along. To what extent is this big delay in hitting these major adult milestones got to do with the growing cost of living? I don't think it's purely to do with that. We can discuss it a bit more, as I say. I think we're adopting overly individualistic and overly materialistic life goals, to which religion, by the way, provides a good antidote. So I think we need a serious debate in society about why we're putting off these major life goals, and that we're in the middle of what a friend of mine has called the milestone recession. And of course, this is all feeding very much into our growing demographic crisis. And the discussion about all this, I think, needs to be led chiefly by young people because they are the ones being chiefly affected by it. So they'll do for a few opening remarks, and thank you.
Thank you, David, for your insightful remarks. Our next speaker will be Jennifer Graham, journalist from Desert News from the United States. Jennifer, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be on this panel. I do not consider myself an expert in anything. I'm not a researcher. I am a chronicler of culture and of family life. I am here to represent Deseret News in a sense, but also to represent the modern parent who is struggling with young adult children or teenagers and is having a hard time with this flood of changes that have come to us over the past 20 years. And first of all, I would like to point out how it seems as if the iPhone has been with us forever, right? But it's only been with us since 2007. And before that, I have 4 children ranging in age from 22 to 32. All of them have grown up in this sea of technological change that we have all experienced. And I find it really interesting that we're at a point in the development of smartphones, of digital media, in which we basically raised this child. It's basically been almost 20 years, roughly the amount of time it takes to raise a child from the cradle to voting age in the United States. And we have born this new society and we are witnessing its fruits, and its fruits are poisonous. And so, one thing that I would like to talk about is the smartphone in particular as a vehicle for social media. We talk a lot about the poisonous nature of social media, but social media is enabled by the ubiquitousness of the smartphone. It allows us to connect with one another. Sure, there are many good things about it. I have group chats with my adult children. My family stays connected via the smartphone, but the smartphone has also enabled a sort of secrecy in our children's lives that was never the case before. Our children, as David referenced, spend so much time on these devices when their parents, who are very well-meaning, have no idea what they are doing, to what they are being exposed with these devices. And we see it in a certain coarsening of society, in everything from pornography, from more benign forms of pornography like OnlyFans, for example, to the language that children are being exposed to the violence they're being exposed to under our own roofs, which is kind of terrifying. And of course, this is a challenge for parents individually, but it is also a challenge for us as society. And to this point, we don't seem to be rising to the moment. There are some encouraging features in all of this. David mentioned the lack of socialization skills among children, and that is so apparent. And employers are reporting that Zoomers are coming to job interviews. They're unable to make eye contact with the people that they are interacting with. They are, as was pointed out in the World Happiness Report, which was released last month, a major point of that was the fact that so many young people are dining alone now, which I find kind of horrifying. I will read directly from that report here. And I will say this is not unique to America, but America has been falling in terms of our general levels of happiness. And part of it is the lack of socialization that we are seeing. In 2023, roughly 1 in 4 Americans reported eating all of their meals alone the previous day, which is an increase of more than 53% over the past 2 decades. But this, to me, is the money quote. Dining alone has become more prevalent for every age group, but especially for young people. This, of course, part of this is residue from the pandemic, the changes that lockdowns and isolation brought to all of us, but was particularly hard on young people. But the fact that young people are dining alone these days is stark because young people are the ones who historically have been the ones who socialize. As we grow older, we expect to spend more time alone. Our children move out, our partners and spouses may die. But the fact that these young people are alone and seeing it as a normal way of life should be deeply troubling to all of us. And happiness levels among young people have remarkably declined over the past decade and over the past 2 decades. As part of my job, I get pitches from people about articles that they would like to have written. And I received one a couple of days ago that I thought was interesting, and I will read it to you. It is it was a company that said, "We are pursuing a big project this summer to try to get kids off screens and out playing again. The first part of the pitch of the push just went live, and it's $1,000 giveaway to help a group of kids under 14 build a fort and a tree house this summer. We are trying to inspire hundreds of kids to get together and submit a plan." He went on to say that the advent of the screen-based childhood is among the most important problems in modern life. I agree with that 100%. And I think the term screen-based childhood is a good descriptive of what we all are facing in terms of what is happening to our children and what is happening to our society because of this. But at the same time, I looked at this and couldn't help thinking about the fact that it is very strange that the solution to the screen-based childhood is being presented as a giveaway from a business that is trying to get attention for his business. Part of what is plaguing us is this attention-based marketplace that we are seeing in which everyone is vying for our attention and for our children's attention, and not for the most benign reasons. The screen-based childhood, as I see it, only ends when screen-based parents put down their phones. And that is something that falls on the individual with help from policymakers. Of course, there are so many things that can be done, and I'm sure we will be talking about some of the positive signs we're seeing. But for the screen-based childhood to end, it starts with us, the parents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before we go on to the next speaker, I just want to note the more detailed bios of each of our speakers are being posted in the chat if you want to learn more about their kind of diverse experience and perspectives they bring to this conversation. So for our next speaker, we'll turn to Melissa McKay, who is the president of the Digital Childhood Alliance in the United States. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And Jennifer, like I am with you on this. So I'm a mother of 5 here in Utah. I'm a device and online safety expert. I've been doing this since about 2017. I recently started the Digital Childhood Alliance, which is a coalition meant to bring families and parents together with advocacy groups and eventually with legislators. I started the Alliance after seeing the incredible impact that community groups can have on the well-being of families to elevate the voices of parents into these critical conversations. So I actually worked with Derek this last legislative session to pass the App Store Accountability Act that addresses a lot of these issues with smartphones, with parent consent, with transparency. And I actually got started in this through a community organization. So I'll back up a little bit 8 years ago and kind of tell you how I got started and then what I see happening as far as what we can do to reduce the screen-based childhood. So about 8 years ago, that's my kids. I have 5 kids and they were ages like 2 to 11. So I was in the thick of it. And it was so intense. I remember I went through a period where I literally wore the same yoga pants and t-shirt every single day just because it was hard to get dressed. Think of something creative to wear every day. So I hadn't worked in about 10 years. I hadn't been to school. But I had something terrible happen to a member of my extended family with screens. I had a nephew, and in the back of a public classroom, another student started exposing him to obscene content, violent content, in the lunchroom on his device. And it was really challenging for my sister because she had felt like she did everything right. She had put filters on her own computer. She had not allowed her son to have a smartphone, but because of the ubiquitous nature of these devices, it didn't protect him. Nobody was really protected. And at the time, I knew I was supposed to do something about this. Like there was just something in my heart that said, you're supposed to change something here. But as a mom, I didn't know where to go. And around the time, there was a community conference going, Utah Coalition Against Pornography. So I thought, well, I can at least go to that. I can find something in my closet to wear and go to that. So I went to that and I was sitting a little bit uncomfortable about 3 rows back. And I remember they announced that there was a state senator there, Utah State Senator Todd Weiler. So I quickly looked him up on my phone and figured out what he looked like. And I was like, I'm going to go corner that guy. So as soon as the speech was done, I went and cornered him and I was like, I kind of just trauma dumped. I'm like, I'm a mom. These horrible things are happening. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And he said, let me connect you with my good friend, which was a very powerful lobbyist. And that's how I got started in legislation. In the first year, I worked with Justin Fossen and Todd to pass legislation that teaches kids in school about the harmful effects of pornography and consent. And so after that, I just thought, well, that was a lot. I'm not doing anymore. But every year I came back and I did another piece of legislation until this year we did the App Store Accountability Act that's going to get passed or reintroduced federally here in about 2 weeks. So I share this story mostly just to talk about really how critical I think grassroots movements are and community movements and really parents in enacting change on the higher level. And I think the beautiful thing about grassroots movements is they're kind of the stepping stool between where parents are at and the resources they really need, either politically or professionally. I think as a mom at home who was wearing yoga pants every day, it would have been really hard for me to walk into a senator's office or call up someone. I mean, the thing about legislators, I think we all know as you progress, is that they're so busy, it's hard to get a call back sometimes. So I would just close by saying that I think that these are all problems that we can solve if we come together. I think that if you're in a place where you are really tired, you can reach out to a grassroots movement. If you feel like that you're in a place you have energy, I would say create a grassroots movement because I think that it's going to take all of our voices to be able to solve these very complicated problems. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Melissa. This was inspiring. Our last speaker is Neama Uzan, Program Director for the European Jewish Community Center here in Brussels, Belgium. Neama, the floor is yours.
Hi, Francesco. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. It is fascinating that we are talking about the impact on screens around a screen, just to show the importance of these screens and how difficult it is to actually draw the line on where to go about it. So as you mentioned, my name is Nechama. I work as the program director at the European Jewish Community Center, which is a center located here in Brussels, Belgium, and we promote Jewish culture to the European institutions. We have a very large scale of social and community events, and we cater to everyone from age 0 to age 120. We have a Sunday school, bat mitzvah club, a bar mitzvah club, a teenager club, a young adult club, a young professionals club, a students club, and we really try to bring people together almost all the time for every occasion. And one thing that struck me when I heard David, Jennifer, and Melissa is how important actually these moments are. So even though we don't work as lobbyists to regulate screens, we do regulate screens because when you organize Jewish holidays, festivities, and Shabbat celebrations, it's without screens. The screens are not allowed on Shabbat for 25 hours. It's very magical to organize a Shabbat dinner in a community, and these, like all Jewish communities, do the same. I mean, Orthodox Jewish communities don't use screens on Shabbat, don't use smartphones on Shabbat, and you sit down at a dinner and you just have candles, and that's it. You just have dinner and interact with each other. And I must say that having this one day a week where the screens are completely off and you're off, computers and TVs and actually even, cars, to be honest, and shopping and everything else, just reconnect people. And, the same way that to advocate for a better climate, we have, twice a year in Belgium, car-free day, and we don't use our cars for 2 days a year. So I want to say that Jewish people who actually practice Judaism have a car-free day once a week, and they have a screen-free day once a week, completely, for 25 hours. So these community moments really create the bonding between people, and that's when people actually, you mentioned, Jennifer, that you have children who actually grew with the smartphones. So I could very much relate to that because I have 4 children, aged 20 to 12, and I grew up with smartphones. I didn't have smartphone, and then I had a regular phone, and then I had a smartphone, etc., right? So I really grew with that, and it's difficult to know how to deal with it when it's so new. And as a parent, also, you install filters into your children's computers and phones, and you don't allow phones, but then the friends have phones, and it creates a lot of other problems and so forth. But clearly, when they experience the moments with no phones, we just had the Pesach celebration where we had 2 full days, the first 2 days of Passover and the last 2 days of Passover are screen-free days. But because it was Shabbat before, we actually had 3 days of free screen and 2 last days. And I must say that the environment is so magical. So I'm not trying to fantasize about it, right? Kids fight and adults fight, and there's very strong conversations and so forth. But I think the experience of having real connections and seeing people eye to eye and connecting with them on a real based manner provides such a strong and beautiful feeling that you are motivated to keep on doing it again and again, week after week. We promote a lot the Shabbat, the non-use of screens on Shabbat, even though we don't tell people to actually be religious or practice more, because people should be able to practice the way they wish. That being said, I know many people who don't consider themselves religious whatsoever, but who will still close their screens for 25 hours a week. So I find that this is actually a very nice example on showing that when you experience these screen-free moments, long moments, you actually realize the benefits of it, and you're more motivated to keep on going on and on about it. That's one point. And the second point I wanted to mention, because I think it was Jennifer who mentioned about the milestones, and David also, the fact that we're entering into adulthood later and marriage later and this and that. This is also something I find fascinating with our work, is that milestones are very important. And we have a Sunday school for young children and a bar mitzvah, so meaning when you're 12 or 13, boys and girls, we mark these moments, and we enter children into more adulthood, like in a very conscious way. And then when they are students, we mark this again. And then when they are young adults, we mark this again. And basically we literally put them into boxes and tell them, come on, you guys are older right now. You're more mature. You're more adults. You could take on more responsibilities. Like it's very empowering, actually, to know that you cannot stage a teenager for the first 30 years of your life. You've got to give to your community. And one aspect that I didn't hear here is, and I find it very empowering for the community, is the aspect of giving and volunteering. So sometimes when you tell someone refrain from watching, refrain from screen, refrain from that, it's they're not so motivated to gain the benefits directly. But when you tell them go and give, go and volunteer, give some of your time to the other, then they're motivated, because people mean good, they want to do good, and they want to share. And if you tell them you're needed there because your time is so precious, then the whole dynamic changes. So I think, Melissa, you mentioned about the fact that the shift, or I think Jennifer, the shift was done during COVID, when people started being more alone, having more alone times. We couldn't connect with each other, and this is exactly where we took the ball rolling, meaning we knew it was COVID and people were very isolated, and we created a program that is called Yachad Together program. Yachad means in Hebrew together. And we connected volunteer and isolated people to get a visit on a weekly basis. Now, literally, it was a visit at the step of the doors, because we couldn't even enter each other's home with the mask, but it was still a visit, like a real human being visit, where we gave out a little challah, Shabbat bread, or little cookies or something like that. And the most interesting thing about this project is that the isolated people were very happy to get a visit, but the ones who were much more happy about this were the volunteers. We got so many thank yous from the volunteer telling us, thank you for giving me meaning and making my day so meaningful today, because I feel like I've done something with my life. And I find that sometimes the shift could be done also that way. Yeah, we could, use the law and to legislate type of things. But I think also to empower people to give more and to share more it's magical. And last, I want to share with you a really funny story. We have a program that is called Dialogue and Diversity, in which we invite school students to visit the synagogue and to get to know more about Judaism and Jewish values. And I had, that since October 7, Jewish communities are going through a very difficult and very rough time. And very often we tend to put one against the other. Jewish community versus Muslim community because of what's going on in Israel. And we happen to have one school that had 100% of the students were Muslims. They were all 17, 18 years old. And they came and they were so interested. They asked so many questions. They were so benevolent. It was such a beautiful, beautiful classroom. And I enjoyed so much giving them the workshop. And they started asking me very detailed questions, but very, very detailed questions. Why when you open an egg, you check the egg? Why when you open lettuce, you check lettuce? And I'm like, guys, how do you know that? Even Jewish people don't know that we check. Like, how do you know so much about it? And they took out their cell phones and they showed me the people they follow on Instagram. And it was cute little Jewish girls, French speaking, who have hundreds of thousands of followers who actually share their lifestyle. And they share how when they're baking their cake, they're checking their eggs, and when they're cutting the salad, they're checking their salad, and that they're dressed modestly. And they were so interested about it. And I felt that was so fascinating to know that, yes, screens could be very negative, and I totally agree with every single thing you've said, but we can't forget that it can bring a lot of positivity into the world. And these students who could have been very negative about coming to Jewish community and and with all the political aspects of it and the polarization, didn't feel that at all because they were just following the right people. So it could be also that just redirecting our children to the right influencers, because if anyway they're using the screens, they may as well use them well. That's it.
Thank you so much, Nehama, for your remarks. This was a very, very enlightening initial round of comments. So thank you all for your contributions. As usual, we'll now enter the discussion part where we will engage with our speakers. Before I introduce this part, I would like to invite all of you that are following this webinar to start thinking and submit your questions that you would like to ask to our speakers. You can use the Q&A tool that you will see on your Zoom client. Again, start now so that we will be able to address as many as we can. Now, for our discussion segment of this webinar, we are actually going to look at the results of a survey that we conducted in the weeks leading to this episode. We have asked individuals and families from the United States and Europe to share their insights about families are navigating economic uncertainty, technology, and cultural changes to strengthen their bonds. And although the sample group is not very big, the feedback that we gathered is telling. So we had slightly above 70%, almost 72% of the respondents are actually from the United States. The remaining are from other European countries, Italy, Germany, Netherlands, and Belgium. The family structure of the people that responded to this survey is married or partnered for 77% of the respondents. Then we have single parents or extended families. So this is the demographics that we are looking at. So let me jump into the first question for David. So David, well, when we asked our respondents which economic challenges has your family faced, the results indicate that increased living costs and reduced income are significant economic challenges that families have faced. Can you share specific examples from your perspective on how families are coping with this financial pressure?
Okay, so thank you. I mean, the results aren't really a surprise that the economic challenges, the number one is increased living costs, because we're all familiar with the fact that fuel and heating and electricity costs and food costs have gone up an awful lot in all our countries. I mean, it was a big feature in the US election, last November. It's a feature of elections right across Europe as well. People extremely concerned about getting squeezed by the kind of basics they can't do without. So we've all got to buy food, we've all got to heat and light our houses, and we're finding it harder and harder to do all these things. So these financial pressures get exerted on family life and make it harder on families. And also, by the way, I think it's having a knock-on effect on family formation because obviously, if the cost of accommodation has increased, the cost of renting has increased, if the cost of general living, like as I say, food, heating, electricity, has gone up, it makes it harder to move out of the family home. And so there's been surveys conducted by Eurostat, which is the main statistical body for the European Union, is finding that more and more adult children are still at home with their parents, sometimes well into their 30s and beyond, which is natural, given the sort of increased living costs that we're seeing. Um, so I suppose politically, first of all, you have all kinds of people making promises about what to do. And some of these promises are perfectly sound, like increasing the housing supply, which obviously needs to happen, although the housing supply is finding it difficult to keep up with the sheer rate of population increase that we're seeing in some of our countries. Ireland, for example, has an extremely fast growing population, chiefly through immigration. We have one of the highest immigration rates in the whole of Europe. Hard to believe about Ireland because Ireland was best known for emigration to places like America and Australia and Britain once upon a time. We're now a destination for lots and lots of immigrants, which is obviously putting pressure on the housing supply. But again, we see the government's wondering, well, what do we do about the cost of electricity, the cost of heating, and they're finding it very hard to come up with solutions to that. Um, Community organizations, where do they step in? Well, a very common one within the Catholic Church is the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Nearly every parish in the Catholic world, certainly in places like Britain, Ireland, I think America, Australia, has a branch of the St. Vincent de Paul within their parishes. So they raise money and they try to help families make ends meet. And I know that organizations like St. Vincent de Paul, particularly in winter time, are having more and more demands on their services, more and more demands for helping families to meet their heating bills, meet their food bills, meet their electricity bills. This is a crisis without an obvious ending because actually in most countries the problem is not unemployment, although there are exceptions. The cost is very much the cost of living, and it's very hard to see how the cost of food is suddenly going to come down, even in relative terms. It's very hard to see how the cost of energy is going to come down, at least in relative terms. And this is obviously going to put added strain on family life and make it more difficult for families to form. But even the community-based organizations, I mean, they only have so much money. There's only so much money they can raise, and there's increasing demand on them for those fairly scarce resources. So this is something probably that ultimately demands maybe a political solution. Sorry to sound pessimistic. I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Thank you, David. I'm going to turn next for a question to Jennifer. Jennifer, in our survey, we asked a question about the use of technology among families and how it's impacted their family relationships, including impacts from social media, smartphones, AI, and things, and what measures families have taken to try to address those impacts. So the question is based on our results, many families have found that technology helps them stay connected on the positive side, but on the negative side can isolate family members at the same time. Based on your work as a journalist or even in your personal experience, how are families in your kind of chronicling of family life addressing these mixed impacts of technology to help reinforce and ensure that family bonds remain strong, even with technology use in the family?
It's an excellent question. And I will first say that I should be seen not as a good example, but a horrible warning, like the bumper sticker says, because I think so many people who are parents of young adults or teenagers, we have a sense that we're all kind of building the plane as it flies. We have been bumbling through this new space, not really sure how much screen time is appropriate, what age to give a child access to technology. Everyone's making different decisions. Thankfully, there seems to be enough kind of concern or maybe terror in terms of what we're seeing, that there is a national conversation, an international conversation going on about how we can push back. I, for one, am hopeful that we might have hit rock bottom at some point within the past couple of years in terms of getting deeper and deeper into how much we allow technology to influence our life. There seems to be enough pushback, enough conversations going on that I think that parents are thinking more thoughtfully about how to use screens and particularly how to use screens even when interacting with each other. I wrote a piece about a year ago about what is, I think people are perhaps familiar with the term sib chat, which is a shortened version of sibling chat. My children all have a chat within themselves in which they stay connected. I only know about it because I accidentally got sent something in the Sib chat once, and it was immediately followed up with wrong chat. Mom was not supposed to see that. So I wouldn't have even known that this was going on, but they had this little circle of mostly memes and, sharing headlines and news of the day and such. And I, for context, I have three children who are very much alike and one who's kind of the black sheep. I guess maybe people with large families all have a scenario like that. But I was so gratified that the four of them were interacting in this way, even though their interests are so different. And there's definitely closeness with some that aren't with the other, but they had created this little bond through their phones, which was a good thing. So, as several speakers have noted, that not everything is negative in this landscape for sure. It falls on us to figure out what is. And as David said, I also agree that the way forward is the young people, that it's perhaps people of my generation, the baby boomers, who have created this mess inadvertently. We did not know what we were creating. We could blame big tech to a degree because of the algorithms and the business models that profit literally from our spending more and more time on social media platforms and looking at streaming and everything else. So the older generation may have created this problem, but the younger generation may find their way out. And I'm hopeful because if you Google my year away from social media, there's so many people taking a long detox, a digital Sabbath, as it were. Um, what is concerning about that is then they're posting about it online. So I'm not sure. We all still seem to have the claws of social media and technology in us, even when we are trying to get out. Um, but still, there are enough hopeful signs that I think we will get there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sorry, I was taking notes. All what you're saying is very, very interesting. Melissa, question for you. One of the open questions we asked in our survey was, what strategies have you used to cope with these challenges? A couple of examples of replies were cut spending and look for ways to increase income, or we have a financial advisors who watch our investment portfolio to make appropriate adjustments. So the question for you is, given the importance, given the fact that the survey highlights the importance of community and family support in coping with these economic challenges, how do you see community and grassroots-based programs helping families navigate these challenges effectively?
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. That's a great question. I think, again, I kind of go back to my opening remarks and that I think that community groups are this really necessary bridge between families and kind of where they need to go. I'll just speak to some of my own experiences with community groups and how they've helped our family, both economically and mentally. Like the PTA, for example. I know that that's one we have probably all had some experiences with. interacting with our kids' school, just providing the camaraderie, the help, the support for kids, but even tennis clubs, soccer clubs for my kids to help kind of keep them busy. I feel like we talk a lot about not wanting our kids to be on screens, but we have to fill that time with something, right? It's very hard as parents to work or to make a living or to make smart investments when our kids are in trouble emotionally or struggling. So I think it's really important economically. We need to be aware of the fact that our kids need to be in good places doing good things. Otherwise, the parents are going to start struggling, and then the whole family, by an extension, is going to start struggling. So any of these community groups are very helpful to get families out of the screen-based at home into doing better things. But additionally, I feel like that these community groups can be a source of income for people. And I personally believe that all of us have these God-given talents within us. And one of the biggest, most beautiful journeys in life is to figuring out what we have uniquely to offer the world. And I think it's different for everybody. For example, I have a friend and her talent is meditation and healing. So she will go around and do sound bowls and meditation. And I think that it probably took her some time to find that niche interest, but she goes around and makes a living and helps people just off this kind of community service she provides to people and brings people together and helps to heal them. So I guess that the answer would be it's multi-pronged. Community groups help us with our children and which in turn helps us economically. They can help us earn actually money, and I think it just helps us be more emotionally well to be connected with our community generally.
Thank you, Melissa, for those comments. I'd like to turn to Neema for a question around our survey showed that changing cultural norms, such as increased priority around things like diversity and inclusion, are influencing family dynamics. And in your experience in your work, how are religious groups and communities helping families navigate cultural shifts of any variety, really, to help strengthen family bonds and values as kind of the ground underneath them moves different ways?
Thank you, Derek, for the question. We tend to compare community as a tree. So basically, a tree has very deep roots, and the deeper the roots are, the more stable the tree is. And yes, the tree can be, going with the wind and back and forth and so forth, but the anchorage is really important. So on one side, we tend to really a big emphasis on Jewish values, life cycles, all these events, this togetherness where we get together and we explore our Judaism and we explore the values and we talk about it and we celebrate it together. But at the same time, we have created other branches such as dialogue and diversity, where we created other spaces where we get together with people of different creeds and different beliefs or non-believers at all, where we create common grounds with everyone, and that has been very enriching for our community. And I would like to say also for myself, because I grew up Jewish and my family is very observant, and I went to a Jewish school and I studied Jewish studies, and I created a Jewish community, and I was very well aware about my heritage, but I was not very much aware about other people's heritage. And when we created this bridge, this is really a bridge between us and other communities. It has first of all enriched myself with the knowledge and the understanding of other people, gave me much more positive outlook of others, but also much more appreciation about my own values and my own heritage and the wealth of and the depth of what I have. And I find this is very present in our community. So I must say that for me, there is this deeply rooted values that are really important, and we have to go in depth and understand it. That being said, we also have to reach out to others and really get to know one another and create common grounds with other people, because we're all created at the image of God, and we're all equal in that terms.
Thank you, Neema. let's stay with you. The survey highlights the role of religion and values in providing a foundation for facing challenges. So, in your experience, how can religious groups further support families in maintaining their values amidst changing cultural norms?
You tell a Jewish person about facing challenges. This is the definition. The definition of being Jewish is facing challenges and being resilient, is knowing that you come from a people who has always been persecuted wherever they have been, from whoever, and yet that they stayed themselves and believed in their strong beliefs and believed that they have something to bring into the world and shared it. So I find that the whole faith of Judaism and the value system and the way we celebrate it and live it and look at the other is a form of resilience. It's a form of anchoring yourself in the true values in which you believe in, knowing that they are true, and yet accepting and creating a beautiful society with other people, meaning knowing your values should not close yourself on being discriminatory with other people, but on the other side, your values are an anchoring and a form of resilience, of looking at the challenge and knowing you could do it, and you could do it, you could do it. Now, the community is a huge help also, honestly speaking, knowing that you are a member of a community who support one another, who you're going to be seeing on a Sabbath, on Saturday morning in the synagogue, or on Jewish celebrations, or with all these life cycles events, the circumcision at 8 days, and the bar and bat mitzvah, and the weddings, and the divorces, and the burials. Like, knowing that you're going to get together with your community again really helps you go through challenges. And last but not least, because we spoke about a lot of economical, financial challenges, in Judaism, by every holiday we have the commandment to reach out to the less, to the person who has less than you, and to give and to share. And it's called tzedakah, charity. But the interesting thing about charity is that it's badly translated. Charity, tzedakah, really comes from the word tzedek, and tzedek means justice. And the way we see charity, it's not by me being a kind person and helping the other, but it's by me doing justice. Whatever I have does not belong to me. It was given to me, but it was given to me for me to transmit it to someone else and someone else and someone else. And when you see your community as such, and when you see yourself as such, and you see your possessions are not being yours, but not just being something you can use and you can make best use of, then suddenly you create resilience, because you help another and another and another, and it's a stronger support group.
Thank you, Naima, for those beautiful comments around our values and how they help us to engage with others as well as be resilient in ourselves. That's wonderful. Turning to Melissa, with your experience in engaging to enact change as a parent, and kind of a parent turned activist, if I could put it that way, and knowing that there's a lot of people, I'm sure, who are tuning into this who want to engage themselves. What do you recommend for parents who want to take that next step to get involved either in community programs or in policy reforms? What benefits has that involvement had for you and your family that people can learn from and hopefully be inspired by to take that next step?
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Again, a great question. So, as someone who has fought social media actively for 8 years, I've written congressional testimony 4 times about it. I am going to say something nice about social media here, because there are some good things about it occasionally. But the easiest way to get into a community program to connect with other people who share your passions is probably social media. So when this first happened to me with that story with my nephew so many years ago, the first thing I did is went on social media and I found someone named Chris McKenna with Protect Young Eyes, and I just sent him a cold DM or a cold email, and I just said, I want to connect. I want to create a community around this problem. And we've been working together ever since for 8 years now, and just added more people. I have only one social media account. It's a tiny Twitter account with 200 people, but like I get the best connections off of that, connecting with other people that are like-minded. So that may be the only nice thing you ever hear me say about social media in my life, but it's a great place to start. As far as the benefits, I'm religiously oriented. I believe the whole purpose of this earth life is for us to develop physically, emotionally, socially. And I feel like it's really impossible to do that without connecting with other humans. And I love what's been said here about us giving part of ourselves to other people and letting that roll on and on and on, and that kind of being one of the huge purposes of life. And I think that for my own case, going from a mom who had 6 sets of the same yoga pants and t-shirts to and never being published, never have written anything. I didn't even know how to redline in Word at the time. Um, now being published in multiple national outlets and writing my own stuff, starting my own organization, it's just a beautiful process of development, self-development, family development, community development, when you can take that step to reach out to others and join in a good cause. And it can be anything you're interested in. You can share that with other people. And I think that it just makes the world a better place.
Thank you, Melissa. Beautifully said. Jennifer, to you, in your initial remarks, you brought in the topic of loneliness and how devices basically contribute to people separating themselves from the people around them. You said 1/3 of Americans eat all 3 meals alone, if I recollect it correctly. So the question to you for you is, from the survey, families have highlighted the importance of communication and spending time together to strengthen bonds. So how can families balance technology use in order to maintain strong interpersonal relationships and connections?
Thank you for that question. Just a note, it was 1 in 4 is what the World Happiness Report said about Americans. And just to reiterate, even though America did really poorly in terms of social dining, it by no means is the only country to struggle with this. I believe some of the Latin American countries performed really well in terms of how often people dine together, but Western Europe seems to be struggling. And so it's not just an American problem. In terms of the solutions to this, we've touched on some of this already. One of the things that comes to mind immediately is, again, in terms of teaching children to do better in this space, the adults have to set the example, right? And so many adults are unwilling to put their phone down, even at table. And I think perhaps everyone involved on this call has had the experience, as I have, of seeing cell phones in circumstances that seem wildly inappropriate, whether it is at a concert, whether it is at a setting such as the beach or in a national forest or such. I went to see the solar eclipse in America, in Northeastern America last year. And again, here we are with this celestial grandeur, and every single person had their phone out. And it's striking and it's heartbreaking at the same time that we have allowed these devices to control us, basically. One thing that I have talked about with people in the past is how difficult it is for many of us to even run an errand without our cell phone. We have the idea that there is some crisis is going to take place if we don't have it, if people are not able to contact us instantly. And certainly, as parents, we enjoy being tethered to our children in some way, it gives us some sense of security that they can reach us at any time. But there is also quite an unnatural fear of not having the phone on us that seems to be a problem when we can't even go to the grocery store. For example, I know in my own life, if I leave the phone behind while I'm running an errand, there is some mild terror that goes through my bones. Oh, what am I going to miss? Somebody might need me. Well, for 99.9% of humanity, we got by somehow without people contacting us. And very rarely is there an emergency in which we're needed right away. So, to experiment in some ways with cutting that lifeline to the phone, as scary as it might be to do without it for a while. We've talked a little bit about the benefits of observing a digital Sabbath. I try to do that myself, although I'm not very good at it. I do go offline from work and from my computer, but I still check the phone, and I'm taking some inspiration today, and I may try to make a more clean break this coming weekend, and also to expand it uh, longer than a 24-hour period. Because one thing that I think you do discover is that when you have had that time away, you want more, right? It's not, you want the Sabbath to last 2 days, 3 days. And our employers perhaps might not like this. I know being in the news business, there's an expectation that we have to respond to news as it happens, which unfortunately does not take Saturday or Sunday off. So we have to navigate our professional responsibilities with the need for technology being part of our life. But where we can take a hard look and perhaps draw brighter lines is how it intrudes into our family life. And at minimum, we should not be sitting at table with each other with devices.
Thank you, Jennifer. For our last question before we turn to the audience questions, I want to go back to David. David, in your comments previously talked about the cost of living families are experiencing and possible the need for political solutions, and maybe you're expressed some kind of some negativity about those possibilities. But the question I have based on our survey on that topic is that many families are implementing adjustments based on cost of living to their lifestyles. What can we as society generally do to better support families in making those adjustments so they can effectively meet their financial needs and possibly get back on a path of financial growth? David, you're muted.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to actually try and approach this question in a completely different, more kind of macro way, because I think everything we're talking about now, including social media, and I was very interested to hear the remarks that Nahama was making about the resilience of kind of Judaism and the incredibly deep roots and foundations of Judaism and how it has survived absolutely everything thrown at it over a 3,000 year period. I mean, it's just a remarkable thing. Probably my favorite sort of religious leader of the last 20 years has been the late Chief Rabbi of Britain, Jonathan Sacks, an amazing man. And he used to talk about creative minorities and the necessity of creative minorities and how Christians could learn from Judaism, which has been so for such a long time and often very hostile circumstances, a creative minority. And I think that religious people generally are becoming a creative minority within our societies. It's just going to become ever more vitally necessary. I mean, the more I read about this, the more it impacts on me that probably the greatest challenge we're facing now, and social media is a big one, and the influence of the internet is a big one, but it's actually the immense challenge provided by demographic change. I mean, Ireland is a place commonly and historically associated with big families, but the Irish fertility or birth rate has dropped way below replacement. It's dropped down to 1.5. And what, a couple need to replace themselves is on average, obviously, I think it comes 2.1 children. We're way below. So we're facing an era of very rapid population aging, and ultimately with immigration, even rapid population decline. Now, within these populations, there's going to be one group that's going to be bucking the trend, and I hope this remains the case, and that is religious communities. Because religious people, that is, people who actually take their religion seriously, tend to have more children than the average. And so I think that over time, we're going to see, if you like, and this is what Judaism proves, the kind of, if I can put it this way, the evolutionary survival value of religion is going to be abundantly proven within the societies that are now developing all around us, because religions provide networks of support. They kind of challenge the extremely materialistic and individualistic values of modern societies, not just Western values, by the way. So, not just Western societies. We see the same thing very much in East Asia as well. Even a country like India, their fertility rate has dropped below replacement level because what's happening is these kind of individualistic and materialistic values are overtaking even in those countries. And religious people, on average, are more motivated to marry enough children. Can you imagine anything more vitally necessary as the years pass and the demographic crisis takes hold than to have a group within society that are more highly motivated than the average to marry enough children? And the necessity of that and the precious commodity that religious people are going to be to society is going to become ever more apparent. And I see, by the way, from a British survey from the Bible Society, they're a really major survey, there is something of a mini religious revival taking place among young people there. And something similar seems to be happening in the United States as well. It's still small, but something is beginning to appear that sociologists and surveys are able to pick up, because religion offers belonging, it offers beliefs, and it offers good behavior. What's more vitally necessary? So if we want to cope with the transitions of modern life, it's actually very ancient values that are going to see us through. And are hopefully going to see us through to the other side. So all the things we're talking about now, and I think all the challenges which are buffeting us, I think the deep values of religion are going to dramatically come true, and are going to become ever more obvious in a secularizing and aging society.
Thank you, David. So that concludes this discussion Q&A from us as moderators, and we'd like to turn to a few audience questions that have been posted in the chat to kind of conclude our webinar. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to combine a couple questions that have a similar theme. Alexa asks in the Q&A, what can parents do to help their children be positive agents of screen usage? And then Jean also talks about what concrete ideas there are for parents to help their children of all ages use devices in ways that increase self-esteem, encourage them to become responsible citizens, foster genuine connections. So this positive use of screen time, and what ideas do the panelists have for parents? I know Naima, you had mentioned the importance of seeing the positive elements that screens can do with through how people follow each other. So I don't know if you have any thoughts there, but also would like to invite Melissa and Jennifer, and then David, if you also have ideas on that question.
I just think regulating as a parent makes always sense, right? As a parent, we have a family link for our children. We don't give cell phones or smartphones before the age of 14, which is quite late in the school where our kids are. But there is family link. There is a set time for screen on a daily basis. All the social media is out. It's just for WhatsApp. But I mean, so I think it was Jennifer who mentioned that it's like you kick him out from the door and it comes back through the window. Like, I know I removed all social media from the phones, and yet I still see my daughter on social media, because actually people post their social media on their status on WhatsApp. So it means that it comes back to them by using WhatsApp. So I feel like no matter what I do, and this is very my honest conclusion about it, I hide screens from the house when I go away, because I know that some screens I don't have filters, and I come back and there's another screen reappearing because I forgot this one or I forgot that one. So in a way we can regulate and forbid and not allow, But probably the best thing is education, honestly speaking, and really teaching the children the same way you teach a child at 2 year old, like when you cross the street you have to hold mommy's hands, and when you and at 6 years old, when you cross it by yourself you have to wait for the red light, etc., etc., and you show the dangers of it. I think we need to educate the children much younger these days. Jennifer mentioned that we are building the plane as it's flying, and I really feel that also. Like I'm really learning that filters are not that good, and family link is not the best, and hiding the screens still reappear, and so on. So I really, the best is really to sit down with your children and give them a proper education, even though I know it might not work the first, second, or third time. But I find that as parents, our obligation is to educate them about it and show them the dangers of it, and show them that you have to watch your eyes. In Judaism, watching your eyes is a rule that came way before screens. Okay, you have to watch your eyes. You have to be careful what enters through your eyes, what enters through your ears, what comes through your mouth. Like, this is like something that you're being taught at age 2. Watch out, be careful. There are red lines, there are fences, there are certain spaces you cannot go in. Your parents' bedroom is locked. Like, there are certain things that are just like that. You don't enter. And I find that education and educating the children from very early on about the dangers of things will help the child. I'm not saying it will definitely work, because it might not definitely work, but it will still be a very good prevention. And in a way, we need to empower the children themselves for being the right guards for themselves. And second thing I'd like to say is that we welcome every year a volunteer from an organization that is called ISF. In German, I don't know, I can say it, but it's an organization that was created after the war that sends volunteers all over the world, age 18, to work in either Jewish organizations, museum, or archives, etc. And it's been 7 years now. We have volunteers coming by us for 1 full year, and I'm always so impressed by the way they deal with social media much better than me. By the way, they deal with screen time much better than me. We have to trust our children. These kids are 17, 18 years old, and they're not on social media. They're off Facebook for sure. And they're sometimes Insta, sometimes not, this and that, whatever. They are so amazing, actually, because they actually got on the train much earlier than us. In a way, we are the old generations, and we're like trying to get on it, but they are born with it. And in a way, we have to trust them. And I'd like to invite us six today to really listen. Maybe the next survey could be about this. The survey could be for children ages 13 to 18, how they regulate themselves with social media or with screen time. What are their benefits, or how do they manage it? Because they have better ways than us for sure, and we have to start listening to them.
Did you want me to go next, say something? Okay. So there's a saying in child advocacy, and this is kind of all the top advocates, and it's delay is the way and slow not no. And that means that we give children technology at the level that they can handle it. So maybe when they're little, it starts with a bark phone, and then we can upgrade to a little more technology, and then a little more technology. So something I've learned over my 8 years of advocacy is these big tech companies are not our friends. Right now, the big tech is the Wild West. Something the App Store Accountability Act addresses is the fact that even the app age ratings are inaccurate. So if you download an app for your child and you think that it's appropriate, there's a lot of chances that it's actually not going to be appropriate. So I would say if you want your kids to have a positive use of technology, until some more of these laws get passed, until there's some more regulation, there's no way to avoid being incredibly involved as a parent. Understanding my friend Chris has something called the 7-day rule, meaning that he doesn't let his kid use any app until he himself has used it for 7 days. Because a lot of times you'll get into these apps and 2 or 3 days in, you'll realize like, whoa, I didn't expect that was available in that app. So I hate to use the term helicopter parent, but until the laws and regulations catch up, I feel like as parents, that's just going to be what we need to do, is this kind of over supervision and delay until we believe they're ready.
I love that 7-day law. I haven't heard of anything like that, but that makes total sense. And I would concur with that kind of strategy. And I also would say that any sort of parenting strategy that can cut down or delay the secrecy factor in social media, um, whether it is having a central place for a family computer or screen. I know people who have a table where screens are set up. There are not only constrictions in terms of how long you can use the technology, but you're using it in full sight of anyone in the family, which may seem a little bit draconian, but it definitely reinforces the idea that this is not something you should be doing in a closed bedroom, and there are dangers associated with um, delving into the internet um, in a closed kind of environment. So I would say that those are strategies that I did not have when my children were young. I wish that I had. And two other factors in all of this, of course, is the children have to be brought up in an environment where values are primary, right? And we are seeing in troubling ways what happens when children are raised outside of a faith group without that kind of support, without that kind of social support, without that kind of spiritual solace. And I think that that is contributing in many ways to the anxiety and depression rates that we're seeing in young people, which of course is also exacerbated by screen time. I think the cutoff for an impact on mental health is 3 hours, that after 3 hours of screen time in a day. Melissa may know this better than I do, but the rates of anxiety, depression, and other kinds of mental health challenges soar. And in America right now, I think the average amount of screen time for young people is 5 hours a day, and probably much greater for adults. So that's another factor as well, of course, is the spiritual values that support the things we want to be doing with our time in place of, again, we've got to, if we are going to take away screen time, we've got to have something fulfilling and meaningful to put in its place. And another thing, parents need to develop a backbone and encourage being different from other families. And this has always been a challenge of parenting, right? Not to raise children who are lemmings and follow others off a cliff. Some of the most healthiest, most vibrant, most flourishing families I have known are families who have had strong guardrails when it comes not only to technology use, but even to television, which it seems almost quaint now to talk about the effects of television. But 20 years ago, before we had all these auxiliary devices, screen time in front of a television was the problem. And the revolutionary parents then were the ones who said, well, we're only going to watch one television show a week. Or horror of horrors, we are going to raise our children without a television in the home. And if you know families like this, as I do, the outcome is pretty good. So it's building a network of like-minded people who can support us in this and conveying to our children the positive benefits of this lifestyle, again, as age appropriate.
Thank you all for these questions and for your answers. I have one question, which I believe might be in the end the last, because it's a question originally from Laurie to Nehama, which I think, Nehama, you already answered in part during your remarks. Do you partner with other community organizations and religious groups? Have you been able to develop interfaith relationships and work with other like-minded groups in the faith community on these issues? If so, can you share some examples? But I would like to extend this. Nama, you take this, but I would like to extend this also to Melissa and then David and Jennifer in this way. Melissa, you are an example of a parent who takes things into her hands and decides to challenge the legislator uh, to to work with them and to improve legislations for families. And there are many mothers and parents, mothers and fathers out there that may be wondering, how do I start in my city, in my community, in my school? And for you, Jennifer and David, with your media background, my question for you would be, how do stories like this, stories like the experience from Nehama or the experience of Melissa, how do they make the news? How can these stories of people or organizations working to support families can make ways into the news stream? What would be your your advice? So let's start with Nehama, and then Melissa, and then Jennifer, and David.
Thank you, Francesco. I think as you mentioned, yes, we we love partnering with everybody and anyone actually. We just try to find one common ground and one objective that we have in common, and we love to work with different people who have different opinions than us, who see the world differently, but yet for who values are really important, and for creating a better world and a more inclusive world is the mission. That's all. So that's why we created Dialogue and Diversity in 2017. And that's why we reached out to, after the refugee crisis in 2014 with the Syrians, and in 2022 with the Ukrainians, and with more organizations. And we brought in, we basically, we cannot work alone. It doesn't, our organization is called Jewish Community Center. We are here to create a community. So first you create a community with, let's say, the people who are like you, so-called, so Jewish, and then you grow the community to other people who want to create a better world for themselves and a better society, and the inclusiveness of bringing people together and creating new projects and taking new avenues is the key. We cannot do it alone, and this is what we see here. We are from different backgrounds and different places in the world, and yet we are talking together as one and same people. We agree, and we see the world. We know the direction we want to get, and we try to get to this direction using different avenues. I learned so much from you today, and that's what we're here for. So I really strongly advise all of us, and everyone listening today, reach out to your neighbor and reach out to people who look different and who you think are different, but yet you will see there is so much common ground and so much common objectives you have, and with strong values together you can build and create such beautiful things. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll speak a little bit to how to approach your legislators if you want to enact change, because honestly, it's one of the fastest way. When we passed our App Store Accountability Act, I had been doing grassroots movements for 8 years to try to get Apple and Google to fix things. We'd written letters, we'd done national movements, we tried to do exposés. We wrote this legislation, it passed through the first chamber, and Apple and Google came out with massive changes to their safety within a few weeks. And so I am a huge advocate of the legislative process, but there is a little bit of magic to doing it the correct way. So first, it's really easy to find your representative in every country. You can find them online. You just find out where you live. You can find, their email, a lot of times their phone number. But the second most important point is probably learning how to cultivate your voice, because there's so much vitriol right now in politics, and a lot of times people don't know how to talk to these politicians, and so they just slam them. Like you'll see on social media where the politician will write a post and the first 10 comments underneath it are just trolls. So politicians have a little bit of a shell right now, or a thick skin, towards people who don't approach them respectfully. And so I would say, if you have a problem, be able to articulate it clearly, be able to articulate it respectfully, and then just understand they actually want to talk to you. I talk to legislators all the time, and they're so sick of lobbyists. I mean, they'll come out of chamber and they'll get attacked by 10 or 15 lobbyists, and they don't want to hear those voices. They want to hear the voices of the moms and the dads. Like I know tech companies like AT&T last session hired moms and dads, like moms and dad advocates, just because they're more effective now than even their paid lobbyists. So just those three things: find your legislator, cultivate your voice, and then you understand that they want to talk to you. So have the courage to do it.
And I'll jump in and talk about our responsibility as journalists, as media organizations. And the thing that comes to mind first is that whenever a story comes across our desk with one of these depressing headlines, like the news about the World Happiness Report and its findings on people dining alone across the world, I think that a positive way to approach this news is not to just report the negative findings, but to find the stories of people who are bucking this trend and present them as inspiration. One thing that we have found in the newspaper industry in particular is that stories that fit under the category inspire me tend to do really well among readers because we're all seeking inspiration in every aspect of our life, right? And the news can be very depressing. So, I mean, it's beneficial to publications, media companies, cable networks, and so forth to present these kinds of stories because people want to turn off the news when it does nothing but present one terrifying or depressing story right after the other. So to find a way to talk about these stories of people bucking these trends, and in this way, this also falls on you who are advocates in this space to make journalists aware of these stories because we don't know what a family in Utah or New Mexico or in Ireland or in Israel are doing to buck these trends unless somebody tells us about them. And I think people don't realize how much journalists crave stories of real people doing interesting things. And so I would encourage all of you, if you know of a family who is doing something really interesting in this space, to contact your local media and say, of course, obviously, if the people are willing to talk to a journalist, and they're not always willing, but if they are willing to share their story, that is one way to get inspiration out into the world that all of us can draw from. Thank you.
All right. As we come to a close of our webinar, I want to thank all of our participants, David, Melissa, Jennifer, and Naama. Thank all the audience members who contributed questions and those who viewed and hopefully got some insights from this. Before we talk about future upcoming webinars in this series, I want to summarize what some takeaways are from me from the comments and the discussion, which has been very fruitful for me, at least. I think hopefully, everyone is getting their own insights, obviously, and just want to add some of my thoughts, I guess, to the discussion. From David, recognizing how costs of living are impacting family life and the need for both community organizations and policymakers to give attention to these, to offer supports for families, and that being kind of maybe a stormy cloud. On the other hand, looking forward with some optimism to some current developments, such as the surveys that he mentioned of young people turning to faith in both in the European Union as well as the United States to kind of find some supports around navigating these challenges that families and individuals are facing. From Jennifer's comments, recognizing this two-headed hydra of sorts of the screen-based childhood and the attention-based marketplace, putting pressure on families and the relationships there, and the need for parents to create a haven from those things, and appreciated everybody's ideas as to how to do that, from digital Sabbaths to cabining screens to a particular place in the home, to parents engaging with apps before allowing children to engage them themselves. From Melissa's inspiring story of her personal kind of evolution from being a parent, feeling kind of not sure what to do, to engaging and changing the law and the policy, recognizing really what that's symbolic of is that social and cultural change begins with what is happening, or maybe just as importantly, what is not happening around the dinner table, around the home, not so much around the negotiating table in politics or business, which is kind of what happens at the end of change. And then Naoma's wonderful comments about deeply rooted values that we can have and how they can create the resilience that we need to be able to also then engage confidently with others and learn about their values and how they're different and appreciate them as well as appreciate our own. And how that is a critical, important thing for dealing with cultural changes and things that families are facing. So thank you again, all the panelists for this conversation from Sutherland Institute. And for some final concluding remarks, looking to the future, I want to turn to Francesco.
Thank you, Derek, and amen to your summary. Thank you on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as well for your wonderful remarks and contribution to this discussion. Now, the Strengthening Families Initiative will continue this year, next month, in Brussels, with a policy exchange. This will be an in-person conference, day-long conference. We'll be sending out invitations through our newsletter. We will have limited seating, but we hope to fill those with as many as possible of those who would like to contribute to this very important discussion. We will also have our Family Values Award, a European Family Values Award, on the same day. So we have a month of May very packed with family-oriented events. In June, we will have our third webinar, where we will bring together policymakers from the US and Europe to discuss these very topics. This time we will look at policy initiatives, suggestions, and recommendations to create a policy environment that is favorable and helpful for families. In November, we'll continue this time on the other side of the Atlantic. We'll be in Salt Lake City, hosted by Sutherland Institute, where, again, we will have a policy exchange with local state legislators and civil society organizations on these very topics, and the Sutherland Institute Family Values Award. So we're very excited for the continuation of this initiative, and we hope that you will follow us, that you'll be part of the journey, and with your comments, suggestions, questions during these webinars. So again, from Sutherland Institute and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, thank you very much for being with us today and in the episodes to come. Have a wonderful day.